Hello, welcome to Resistance Live. It's Tuesday, December 17th, 2024. Hope you're all doing well. Kind of a busy news day in the last 24 hours. And we have an enormous amount to talk about, not the least of which is Judge Merchan's decision that dropped last night about Trump's motion to dismiss on the basis of presidential immunity. So, and that's on top of a whole bunch of other things that are going on the Hill and a bunch of questions that we've had about issues related to nominations. So lots to cover today. We will get to all of it. And I'm glad you guys are here. Okay. So today for our visually challenged viewers, I am wearing a cream colored turtleneck sweater. I am a pink skinned, green eyed, dirty blonde haired woman. My hair is down today. I have my thin gold hoops in. I'm in front of my bookshelf. I've moved a little bit to the side and my thick cushy chair, and yeah, I need to get a plant in here or something, you guys. Like, my set is looking a little like less lively than I would prefer. Okay, so late last night, and I'm coming to you as always from occupied, unceded Munsee, Lenape, and Mohican land. Okay, so last night there was a ruling issued by Judge Merchan on one of Trump's several motions to dismiss his convictions, this one on the basis of presidential immunity. And as I predicted, the ruling itself, which is quite substantial, it's 41 pages long, goes through a whole ton of testimony from the case itself, held that all the actions that Donald Trump had engaged in related to the payoff to Stormy Daniels were not within the scope of his presidential duties, nor were they conducted during the time that he was actually president of the United States, and therefore presidential immunity didn't apply. Now, because Judge Merchan is incredibly thorough, and I just, I have to take a moment here. I don't often do this, but I'm just going to do this right now. There were a lot of very cynical people who said, we all know Merchan's on the take and he's going to do what Trump wants. And I was like, no, because we saw him in action during the trial itself. And as I've said to all of you, like over and over and over again, as well as people on my audiences on social media, Judge Merchan has shown himself to be a very thorough, very thoughtful, very articulate judge when it comes to how he has balanced the issues of the law and the issues of Trump as a defendant, to do it in such a way where the conviction and the rulings can be upheld on appeal. And this was no different, all right? He was not just going to randomly let Trump off the hook for 34 criminal felony convictions that preceded the time that he was in office. All right. So it's a very solid ruling. Now, it did go through in great detail the testimony of people who worked for Trump while Trump was in the White House, like Hope Hicks, like Madeleine Westerhout, folks who were responsible for conveying checks that needed to be signed out of Trump's personal bank account to Trump after he took office. But the ruling itself was, this was all personal stuff. It goes through all the testimony of these people saying this was about his personal business, correct? And I have to say one thing, shout out to Alvin Bragg's team, because they clearly knew what was coming. The questions that were asked of all the witnesses who worked for Trump in the White House included questions that were like, this related to Trump's personal bank account, correct? Yes. You coordinated with people concerning Trump's personal business affairs from New York. Yes. These were checks signed out of Trump's personal checking account. Yes. All those kinds of questions were asked in anticipation of there being an argument, I guess, however tenuous, that Trump had presidential immunity for paying off Stormy Daniels. The best part of this order comes at the end, where Merchan dismisses out of hand the idea that Trump's conviction should be thrown out. But then on top of it says, and to the extent that there was any testimony admitted that that arguably related to the time that Trump was in the White House, there was so much overwhelming evidence of guilt admitted in this case that the impact of that testimony was de minimis. Now, you guys will remember when we started talking about this particular effort by Trump, I told you about the de minimis standard, which is essentially where if something happens to slip in that falls within the scope of presidential immunity, the impact of it, given the totality of the evidence, would be considered minimal, right? That's what the de minimis standard means. And so, lo and behold, at the final pages of this order, Merchan says, so much overwhelming evidence of guilt that even in the outside chance that a court were to find that something related here to Trump's time in the Oval Office, if there's so much overwhelming evidence of guilt preceding that it doesn't matter. And so it's a very solid order. For those who are asking what happens next, please understand that in order for this to get anywhere, like the Supreme Court, it has to go through all the New York courts of appeal first. Okay. So it has to go to the appellate division, and then it has to go to the Court of Appeals, which is technically what would be considered a Supreme Court in any other state. New York has kind of funky nomenclature on this. The Supreme Court is actually the trial court. Then there's the Supreme Court Appellate Division, which is the middle tier of appeals. Then there's the Court of Appeals, which is technically what would be a Supreme Court in any other states. And after that, Trump can try to appeal it to the Supreme Court. But I'm going to tell you, this is a very solid opinion. And honestly, I don't see, first of all, the New York courts are not going to have any of this. Like, we've already seen a multitude of his appeals throughout the New York court system just be dismissed out of hand. It may get to the Supreme Court. It will be up to them whether or not they grant certiorari on this. I would be a little bit surprised to see a grant of certiorari on this, because Merchan hewed so closely to the presidential immunity decision and how he ruled. So I'm not particularly worried about this getting before the Supreme Court. Now, never say never. I always have to say it over and over again here. Litigation is unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen in the end. But Merchan has done his absolute best here to hew to the opinion of the Supreme Court in determining that the evidence that was admitted in the case does not fall within the scope of the presidential immunity carve-out that was already decided upon by the Supreme Court. So very well reasoned, very articulate. I'm feeling very pleased about it. Now, there's still another pending motion to dismiss that says because Trump was elected president, in November 2024, all the convictions should be thrown out. That also should likewise be dismissed and refused and denied. And so I think Merchan has kind of made his opinions clear on this. And the question now is about sentencing. So for those who are asking, like, why hasn't Trump been sentenced yet? Well, you have to have a sentencing hearing. And we previously had a sentencing hearing scheduled for the end of November. We could very quickly, after last night's ruling, have a request from Alvin Bragg's office to set the sentencing down on the docket again. It is possible that sentencing could happen before the inauguration, and I'm not going to game it out one way or another at this point. The other thing that could happen in relation to that is that we could see, if sentencing is held, we could see another motion from Trump's team to delay sentencing until after he's out of office. Merchan will have to rule on that. So we'll have to see how this all plays out. But we have to wait now for the sentencing hearing to be reset. All right. And that's just a matter of procedure under New York law. All right. Merchan has to put it on the calendar. All the parties have to be present. You cannot sentence someone in absentia. Trump has to be present in the courtroom. And his lawyers have to be present, and there has to be argument, and there will be a review of the pre-sentencing recommendations from the Bureau of the probation department based on Trump's probation interview. And there will be recommendations made by Bragg's office and recommendations made by the defense. And we'll have to see how that all plays out. All right. So that's what's next, assuming, which I think is a very safe assumption, that Merchan also denies the motion to dismiss on the basis of Trump being elected president again. Okay. Yesterday, well, actually, I think it was this morning. The news was reported this morning, but I think the suit may have been filed yesterday. On the heels of ABC settling with Donald Trump, yesterday or this morning, Trump sued the Des Moines Register and Seltzer, the pollster there, and Gannett Company, which is the parent company of the Des Moines Register. Sorry. Oh my God, you guys. For election interference because they reported on Ann Seltzer's poll. You all will remember there was a poll that came out shortly before the election that said that Kamala Harris was up in Iowa by a lot. And okay, this is a totally meritless suit. That's why I'm laughing. It's completely meritless. And the thing I will tell you all is that if the Des Moines Register has bigger balls than ABC, this case will be dismissed out of hand. There is no claim under the law for election interference for reporting on a poll. Okay. I want everybody to be really clear on this. This is very dear leader kind of stuff, but there is no basis under law to claim that a newspaper reporting on a poll is election interference. Okay. It's not like a foreign entity trying to buy votes, right? It's literally legitimate reporting under the First Amendment of the Constitution that allows for a free press. Okay. And Ann Seltzer conducting a poll, accurate or not, is not election interference. So this is all just Joker level stuff. And my hope is that the Des Moines Register has cojones that do not exist at ABC Disney and that they will fight it, because if they fight it, they will win. All right. So that's another little bit of news this morning. Okay. We have to talk about what's going on the Hill with AOC, because there's a battle happening right now on the Hill between like the old guard of Democrats and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is in the running to be the minority leader of the House Oversight Committee and should be. Let me just say that very clearly. AOC should be the House minority leader of the House Oversight Committee. She deserves it. She would be incredible in that role. She should have it. We learned in the last couple of days that the House Democrats on the committee have apparently come out, or some of them at least, have come out in favor instead of Jerry Connolly, who, by the way, is like 77 years old and has just been diagnosed with throat cancer. Not a good look. Nancy Pelosi has also apparently been not in favor of having AOC in this role. But I have to point something out to all of you, because there was some screaming, so to speak, on the Patreon feed this morning about this particular issue. And I just want to make something really clear. Like, please understand that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is not just playing a short game here, she's playing a long game. Because one of the things that she's trying to do here is pressure the old guard of the Democratic Party to make room for younger generations, right? And she's doing that as a figurehead of the progressive movement. So in some sense, there's a game to be won here, whether or not she actually is confirmed as the minority leader of the House Oversight Committee. Now, you should call your reps and you should recommend, if you support this, which you should, that they vote in favor of having AOC as the minority leader of the committee. And you can call Nancy Pelosi's office. You can call Hakeem Jeffries. You can call anybody, and you should call them, not write to them. I saw some people on the Patreon feed this morning who were like, I emailed them. They don't care about emails. Call them. Like, make phone calls, because their staff is required to log those phone calls, and they tie up staff time. And if enough pressure is brought to bear, it actually impacts how a person is operating in their own office on the Hill. So make the phone call. Do not send an email. Make the phone call. All right. But this is emblematic right now of some of the fallout that's happening after the election. All right. And I have some thoughts about all of it right now, because I think part of what's happening is that there is one part of the Democratic Party that is seeking to blame people, and like blame kind of anyone, for Kamala Harris's loss. And then there's another wing of the party that actually recognizes that the election was like super close. Like, there was some data that came out last night that it was literally like 250,000 votes across 3 states that allowed Trump to win. That's not a mandate. That doesn't mean that like the campaign did something wrong. It doesn't mean that like, reaching out to progressive voters was a bad idea, or campaigning with Liz Cheney was a bad idea, on the other hand. It means that it was a very close election under very unusual circumstances, where the candidate literally was not named until like 3 months before the election itself. So we have to stop this idea that like, oh, it's all the progressives' fault, or oh, it's all the centrists' fault. Actually, I would argue, and I'm not alone in this, like Jamie Raskin has been out talking about this in the last few days, that like this is a mandate for us to hold firm to our big tent coalition and keep going, right? Now, do I think it's time for some of the old guard to step aside? Yes. I do think it's time for AOC to have a leadership role. I am all in favor of people like Maxwell Frost and Jasmine Crockett and Greg Casar and other people whose campaigns I have like supported all the way through, Lauren Underwood, right? To have a much larger role in the House. Okay. I'm like all in favor of it. But also, the second that we turn this into something that's like, I don't know, blame X for the outcome of the election, we're actually doing the dirty work of the GOP for it. So see this for what it is. Like, AOC is pushing back because she wants a leadership role. She is playing a short game as well as a long game. And that long game is on behalf not just of herself, but of other progressives within the caucus. And I would say, make your phone calls. Like, that is my recommendation. Call your reps, call Pelosi, call Jeffrey's office, tell them what you think, tell them why, and make sure it gets recorded by their staff. Okay. All right. Somebody asked a question about Jared Moskowitz this morning. And I have to like respond to this. Oh my Lord. Okay. So I have a larger topic that I want to talk about here, just in relation to where people are sitting in the context of what's happening right now. And it truly, it needs to be discussed. All right. But I'm going to say this. Okay. So there's some news this morning out there that Jared Moskowitz is, quote unquote, being considered as Trump's nominee to run FEMA. All right. Just because the Trump campaign has put something out does not make it fact. That's the first and most important thing that I have to say here. Do not believe what they say. Okay. Like, can I just make a point here? Like, if in fact, as like, Fred Gutenberg, who is very good friends with Jared Moskowitz, who I am friends with, has come out this morning and said, just because Trump has said it doesn't mean it's real or that it would be accepted. If he's saying that, then I want you to think about why, like, let's just say this, why, what benefit would it be to the incoming Trump administration to claim that Jared Moskowitz is being considered for the head of FEMA? Let's just think about that for a second. This is my usual who benefits question when we're confronted with something that sounds a little weird or fishy. All right. Who benefits from claiming that Jared Moskowitz is in deep consideration for a Trump cabinet position? Okay. Well, I'll tell you what's happened in the Democratic Party since that news came out is everybody's like, oh my God, I can't believe anybody would consider working with Trump on our side of the fence. What's happened to him? Why is it that there are some Democrats that are kowtowing to Trump? Why would he do that? Right? So what does that do for Trump? That causes division inside the Democratic Party, whether it's true or not. Right? That's the first thing. All right. Like, everybody's got to stop falling for the okie doke. Like, I'm going to say a couple more things about that in a minute, but like right now, like seriously, don't believe everything that they say. Like, a lot of it's not going to come to pass. Much of it is trial balloons and some of it is straight bullshit. Okay. Don't believe everything they say. But I'm also going to make a second point here. Okay. FEMA is an incredibly important agency and it is going to be much more important in the very near future than any of us kind of would care to think about. Okay. In case you haven't noticed, by the way, there was a report in the last 48 hours that the entire limestone shelf on which a huge chunk of Southern Florida sits, including most of Miami Beach, is sinking at a much faster rate than climate scientists had originally predicted, to the point where like it's literally dropping by about 0.6 of an inch a year. Destabilizing all sorts of high-rise buildings in Southern Florida, just as one example. Okay. That's not including all the predictions about like a multitude of far more violent hurricanes than we've ever seen before. Okay. It's not including other climate related disasters like floods and wildfires that have already kind of dominated the news over the last 5 to 10 years. Right. So when people are lashing out at Jared Moskowitz, first of all, it might not be true. But second of all, can I just say something? There are far worse people who could be nominated to run FEMA in light of what FEMA is likely to have to do during the second Trump term. So people need to get like really grounded around this stuff. Okay. Like you have to apply nuance, and nuance doesn't read well on social media, right? What reads well on social media is like, oh, I can't believe this. F these people, right? You have to think. You've got to think about like, why would he be saying this? And what would the outcome actually look like if it was true? That's just one of several questions you should be asking yourselves about like any major breaking news that apparently is supposed to compel you to outrage. So I need people to kind of like take a breath. And this is something that for whatever reason, like this morning on the Patreon feed, people were very outraged about a lot of different stuff. And I understand that, in this moment, let alone like as we're heading into the holiday season when everybody's kind of like already under an enormous amount of stress, that if what you're doing is being checked into news in a way where you're just getting pinged and pinged and pinged and pinged, and you're not opting to make conscious choices about how you're consuming it, you could be living in a state of outrage 24/7, right? And also you could be living in a state of outrage about things that literally will never happen or kind of are very highly likely to never come to pass, right? So if I could recommend anything right now to everybody in this audience between now and let's just leave it like, sometime in early January when the new Congress is finally seated and, then we have to start dealing with like real shit. Sorry, I'm cursing a lot today. And, then we have the inauguration coming up. It would be this, like, check out of the way in which you are regularly consuming news right now. Take a break. And if you can't do that, at the bare minimum, stop taking everything that Trump and his people say at face value. Okay? If you read something and it sounds bizarre, okay? It sounds like it might, like, you know, how could that have come to pass, right? Like, we know Jared Moskowitz, for instance, is good friend with Susie Wiles, who's going to be Trump's chief of staff, but there's no confirmation from Moskowitz that he's even talked to Trump about any of this, right? You've got to like dig a little deeper. Stop taking their threats, their outrageous statements, their like things that are designed to divide Democrats at face value. Like, we know he lies. He lies as much as he breathes. So do all of his people. Okay? Stop allowing them to yank you around on a chain. Like, it's not good for anyone. It's not good for organizing. It's not good for your health. It's not good for your family. It's not good. Like, make a conscious decision that your moment right now, let's just say hypothetically between now and like, I don't know, let's say the 6th of January, okay? January 6th is going to be about like not allowing them to run your life, right? And I mean that in really serious ways. Like, I personally want to spend as much time as I possibly can between now and the end of the year, like loving on my people, creating like safety for them and lovely experiences and hanging out with my family, right? And enjoying the season and not letting like the entire realm of my central nervous system be destroyed by nonsense. Okay. I'm going to say this also, like, even with this Pelosi and AOC stuff, right? Sometimes I feel like people are looking for a reason to be angry. I mean, and when I see that, what I see is an addiction to outrage, because you can look at all of that and go like, that's political gamesmanship. And we can have a debate about whether or not it's time for Pelosi to let go of some of the reins and whether or not it makes sense to nominate somebody to a committee who's 77 and diagnosed with throat cancer and hasn't even started treatment yet. We can have all sorts of debates about that, but you do not have to treat that like it's like the end of the world, right? You don't have to come at that with like an enormous amount of mind-blowing outrage, which, by the way, then you kind of like dump onto my feed or dump onto social media or dump into the group chats with your friends, right? Like, this stuff is contagious. Much, but by the way, like the drone conspiracy that is currently like my biggest bugaboo as someone who's currently living in the suburbs of New Jersey, right outside of New York City. It's nonsense. Okay. The whole thing is trash. People fly drones. And most of these reports have been like debunked, right? Like, let's get it together. All right. And let's decide, because it's a really good moment to do this, that we're not going to let their BS run our lives for the next little while, at least. Okay. It's going to be unavoidable after January 20th that we're going to have to engage with at least some of it. But right now is the moment to just simply say, like, I'm going to choose to not get outraged by every tiny little thing. I'm going to choose instead to think strategically about how I'm engaging and how I'm going to move forward and, you know, how I'm going to deal with stuff in my own community. I'm going to make decisions for the betterment of the people that I care about, no matter what Trump and his people are doing and the crazy shit they're spewing every day, right? Like, just decide that it is time to like take a pause. Laura, I know you're asking a question. They have, and I can't see it because I don't have my glasses on, but, you know, I do want everybody to understand, like, I really don't want to talk about the drone situation. He doesn't have stomach cancer. He has throat cancer. That's what you were asking about. Jerry Connolly has throat cancer. So look, I think that, and maybe it's stomach cancer, but I'm pretty sure I read that it was throat. Regardless, he's just been diagnosed. He's 77 years old and AOC should be running the committee. Leaving all of this aside, I want to say like one final thing about this. Okay. And, you know, again, I feel like this is advice that I've been giving for many, many years here now on this broadcast, but it feels really important to repeat it today. Okay. You are not powerless in the way in which you respond to what's happening in real time. And the greatest skill set that we all can use right now is the decision to self-regulate in response to external events. Okay. Because you don't have to, you can choose to not be made crazy by what's going on. You can choose to not become depressed about it. That doesn't mean you don't have emotional responses to it, but you get to decide, like, it's within your own control how you're going to consume news, whether or not you're going to follow people who are constantly screaming outrage at you, or whether you're going to follow people who are invested in solutions and who actually want to make suggestions on how to like better society. I don't know, kind of feels like the right way to go to me. You can make decisions about whether or not you're going to let anybody fundamentally ruin your day. And, you know, I'm not trying to be glib about this, but I get really worried when I see like a Patreon feed, for instance, like I saw this morning where everybody's kind of like losing it over stuff that like really doesn't merit that, right? A Pelosi AOC floor fight, which is not even what this is, does not merit crazy outrage. Drones don't merit crazy outrage. Like, you know, this issue of Trump nominating Jared Moskowitz, I'm not even sure it really is real. So you just got to take a breath, all right? And if you find yourself constantly in a state of rage, which I get was like understandable post-election, right? And I get is a part of people's own personal trauma makeup, but I'm just going to say this. Living in a state of rage 24/7 is really bad for you. It's also really bad for the country, okay? Like, I know I spent a lot of time on here talking about like dual power and organizing and all that other kind of stuff in the last little while, but I want to make something really clear. Everybody, including like people who are constantly in the mix of this on social media and people who are not engaged at all, would be way better off if the vast majority of us who are leaders in any way in our own communities chose to start operating from a place of love and compassion and caretaking and ignored this bullshit. Like, it is just, the other thing I'll just say about it is it's so obvious to me how successful Putin's attempts have been to divide the nation, to divide Democrats, to divide progressives, to divide people by identity, to divide people based on age and all sorts of other things. When I read a feed of like all Democrats, like I did this morning, and people are like really pissed off and mad and like looking for people to blame and like living in their outrage. You want to defy that? You want to resist that? You want to find a way to disrupt it? Choose to respond differently. Choose to act differently in relation to it. Like, that's a foundational thing that shifts whole societies. So that's my 2 cents on that. Okay, final question for the day was like, where do I donate money given that it's the end of the year? Okay, so, and this is a really good question for those of you who have money to donate. I do want to make some recommendations here. First and foremost, the National Network of Abortion Funds is desperate for money right now. Okay. That is the last time I looked, it was 64 abortion funds nationwide. It is Black, brown, and queer run. And it is essentially, you donate to NNAF, you are donating out to every abortion fund that is a member, and they help people to travel for abortion care and to obtain abortion care, even in locations where abortion is currently banned. So they desperately need money. I strongly recommend that you donate there. And then beyond that, I'm going to make another recommendation, which is, you know, something that I think a lot of people don't think about. Lots of people will make recommendations to you that you should donate to like nationwide charities, or you should donate to, you know, organizations that do some form of lobbying like Planned Parenthood. I'm going to tell you to do the opposite, because the well-funded nonprofits right now don't need help. Okay. The place to donate is in your local nonprofit mutual aid-based organizations, which are always, always desperate for cash. Okay. Your local food pantry, your local homeless shelter, your local soup kitchen, right? Organizations that are working right now with migrant and undocumented people, organizations that are working on behalf of LGBTQ youth. Donate where you live, okay? Because your dollars in places like that will stretch much farther than donating to national or even international organizations that are generally very well funded. World Central Kitchen is not hurting for money right now, okay? Like, it's really important that you think about the organizations where you live that don't have enough money to do good for people in your own community, okay? And I'm just going to say one other thing. The reason why I mentioned NNAF at the top of this question is because the last call that I was on, NNAF was running out of money about like 60% of the way through every month. There is a desperate need for funding for access to abortion care in this country right now. That's the only nationwide organization that I'm going to recommend this year. Okay. Everything else should be routed through local mutual aid style based organizations. And I'm going to say one other thing. If you can't donate money, donate food, donate your used clothing. The food pantry near me, they take pots and pans for people who are coming out of a situation of being unhoused. They take supplies for cooking, like, kitchen utensils and things like that. There's plenty of opportunities to be of support. And you can also always donate your time. So again, keep in mind here that we all get, hit Giving Thursday and everything else by these huge nonprofits. And many of them just have more money, like they have endowments practically. Like, I don't know, man. The Red Cross has got like $100 million in the bank the last time I looked into it. I haven't donated to them in years. I will just say to you that it is really the places that are going to need help the most in what's coming are the local small support organizations. And that's where you should donate your money. Like, route it there if you have it. Okay. All right. That's it for today, my friends. Reminder, we are off next week and into the following week with the broadcast return on Friday, January 3rd. I want to thank everybody for being here. I'm going to be here live the remainder of the week. But please keep in mind that I will be on and off social media in that window. I don't know. I'm trying to do less, but we'll see. But we will not be broadcasting next week and all the way through till Friday the 3rd. All right. I think that's it for today. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe here. Don't forget to click the bell notification. Oh, and I'm leaving threads on Friday. So if you want to know when the broadcast is live all the time, please don't forget to click the notification button here. And also, please remember, of course, that if you want to support the broadcast, you can become a paid subscriber over at patreon.com/resistancelive for as little as $5 a month. And you can also become a member of the YouTube channel on YouTube only by clicking join below. And that gets you into the live chat and a bunch of other perks. Okay, my friends, I will see you all tomorrow. Everybody have a good rest of your day and try to get some peace. Like, just detach. It's really blissful to just like put on some soft music and read a book right now. Like, so much better for you than being constantly doom scrolling online. All right. I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye.